What is going on? What's going on? Hello to everyone out there. Welcome to another Tuesday. Welcome to another glorious day that the Lord has made. I can preach all night, all day, but that's not why I'm here. But I just want to say thank you all for those who are going to watch this show, this podcast. I'm looking forward to the conversation that I will have on tonight. So, again, I want to say thank you to everyone. Like, share on this show. So, tonight, I'm continuing this two-part series about Black America since it's Black History Month, Black America, and talking about the past, the present, and the future. All right, the past, the present, and the future. So tonight I have with me one of the greatest. She calls herself the Wonderful, but I'm gonna have her introduce herself to everyone. Ms. D, take it away.
Hello. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me on. I am so excited about your podcast, about your coffee and conversation. So, thank you for having me on this week. My name is DeWanda Ricks, and people call me DeWonderful. I serve with Kevin at our local church in our youth department, and we call it Firehouse, and that's with our middle school, high school students. And so that's where Kevin and I first met, and that is where they call me Miss D affectionately. And love serving, love Kevin, love his spirit. So I thank God for what he's doing with this conversation. I think a conversation brings knowledge and awareness. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for having me on tonight.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So when we talk about Black America, and we talk about the past, the present, and the future, what, in your own words, is Black America to you?
To me, Black America is really my heritage. It's my culture. It's me. It's my ancestors. It's my legacy that I want to leave. It's my family. Black America is really me. That's all I can say. It's me. It's what I stand for.
Okay. Okay. All right. So what you stand for? So what do you stand for?
I stand for again knowledge, awareness. We are and have been, as you know, like our race. We were in slavery, and that set us behind. We started behind, right? We're just now, what, one or two generations into owning homes, one and two generations into building wealth, into leaving a legacy where we can leave a savings account, a trust, a home for our children. And so, as we continue to grow, we want to share that knowledge with our children so that they don't regress and go backwards, right? We want them to understand where we came from so that they continue to grow and really exceed where we in our lives in this generation where we are today.
Okay. So you talk about knowledge, and one of the things last week that I guess Dathan and I were talking about was knowledge because growing up, for me, it wasn't. I wasn't really taught about savings and about owning your own home. It was about survival back then. It was about trying to make it out of the neighborhood that I grew up in. So the thing is, how do you get to a point to where you're saying to yourself, okay, I have to change something in this cycle because it's a generational thing, like you said. So you're going from one generation to the next generation, but the knowledge is not pushed on that generation. So how can the next generation, because again, we're talking about past, present, and future. So how can the future generation be better than the past and the present?
I think it starts with communication. It starts with talking, right? In the past, when I talked to my pops, who was my grandfather, who passed in 2004, but he was big on family, and his side of the family created a nonprofit, 501c3. We had family reunions every 2 years, but we also traced our lineage to see where we came from. And my pops always talked about what he did as a child, always talked about his parents, and then was always saying to us, you need to go to school. You need to graduate from high school. You need to go to college, right? It was always trying to better ourselves, but also talked about building community. My pops was in the Marines. When he came out of the Marines, we grew up in Detroit, Michigan. He worked at a rec center and taught our inner community how to box, and they would do sparring matches. So he was always working to build the community as well as us, his grandchildren, his children, and always talking to us about the way of the world, what you have to do in order to achieve. He grew up on beans and cornbread, right? And he was okay with it, but it was, what do you want to eat every day? How can you afford to eat what you want to eat every day? And then what is that plan? So don't just say, oh, I want to be a doctor. Well, how are you going to get there? What school are you going to go to? What are you going to specialize? How much is this going to cost? How are you going to pay for it? Right? Are you getting good grades now so that you can get scholarships and grants? And that's how our pops talk to us, always trying to better our lives, always planting that seed for us to look for, well, what's next? And then how do we get to the next? And we have to tell those stories of where we come from so that our children understand that what they see today isn't what we always had. We've had to work to, and then we want them to create those same work habits, have that same philosophy around what their plan is for their life, and then really think about how they're going to get there. And so sometimes, you can work hard and play hard, right? But we want to
Right.
make sure that what we're working towards will really accomplish our end goal. So we're not just out here, like the Bible says, beating the air, but we actually have a plan in mind, and we're working towards that plan to achieve what we need to achieve. And then we're telling a story. Our pastor, Travis Simons, if you remember, preached, I believe it was in January or February, but it was, I wish someone had told me.
I remember. Yep.
And that was so powerful because if we would just tell our story, we can save our children years of struggle that we went through, right? And I know people are going to have their own path and they're going to make their mistakes, but if we can shave years off of what we had to go through so that they don't have to go through that same thing. And like I said, at that starting point, so instead of starting behind that line, they're at the line with their peers, with their counterparts, with our Caucasian brothers and sisters, right? Instead of starting behind. And that's
Yeah.
that's my goal, is to just shave off those years that I had to struggle, right, in corporate America, what I had to learn, the do's and the don'ts, right? I wish someone had told me that, going in, doing a great job, keeping my head down is not the way to go. I wish someone had told me, you got to go in there and you got to speak up for yourself. I wish someone had told me how to negotiate a salary 20 years ago.
Right.
And I would be just further along than I am now. And I think as we continue to tell those stories, so that our children, those coming up behind us, do not say, I wish someone had told me, because we're telling them.
Right. And that's very valuable. So when you talk about I wish someone had told me, I wish somebody would have told me how hard it was going to be 20, 30 years down the road. I wish someone had told me to look at the economic portion of
Mm,
saving money and the importance of saving money and the importance of education and the importance of doing these things. I know last week Dayton talked about education and about how um, back then education was the biggest thing, and it is the biggest thing now. But now he was saying we need more people with trades. We need more people that's able
mhm,
to get out
mhm,
there and because more people have homes now,
mhm.
and they need to be able to have people that can do plumbing and all these other things. And so when we look at that, I always think about what if I would have been told that. And the thing is, I can't blame it on my parents because they didn't know.
Right.
Because it's like they were taught what they were taught, so they taught us. But at some point, we
Mhm.
got to say, okay, enough is enough. We got to break this generation that is impeding our kids from making it to the next level. And so when you say that's very powerful to me. Now, one of the things that you said when you were talking, you said build a community, and I feel like so let me ask you this: how do we build a community? Like Black Wall Street was powerful back then,
Mhm.
and one of the things that people always say, we have numbers if we stand together and we say, oh well, we're not going to do this or we're not going to do that. But we have the numbers to build a community, build grocery stores and all of that. And so just talk to us about what your thoughts are and that when it comes to building a community.
What I see now is, especially in the millennials, I see a sense of community. I see that they're rallying together. I believe COVID really had a huge impact on the fact that they're now coming together. And so I think what they need are the older generation as mentors, talking to them about what does it mean to really build a community? What does it mean to build our own banks and have our own housing development? And we have HBCUs, right? But they're needing funds. And so how do we generate those funds back into those communities, back into those colleges that are built for us, right? So we as mentors need to be telling those stories. So how do we galvanize the mentors, and how do we galvanize these young kids coming up now that they understand, right? School is important. What am I going to do? We talk so much about STEM related job fields, right? Because that's where the work will be, that's where the money will be, and that's where we need to be, right? As you said, Dathan talked about electricians, but we'll need scientists, technicians, engineers, right? We'll need mathematicians. We'll need all of this in order to build our community. And so as mentors, we need to talk about Black Wall Street and what did that look like. And then it's going to spark ideas for our children to also think about, how can we build this? How can I, go and open up a bank and then get a community of banks and grocery stores in our areas. But then we as people need to support these Black owned businesses, right? And I think that is the main question. How do we get people to support our own? I think that is the hardest thing that we do, is to support our own. But I also believe that we have to keep hope alive. I'm gonna keep referencing our church and the
You fine.
sermons, because they have been on fire. Pastor Brady talked about family love, right? And as we think of our community as family, and we start to love them like the love of God, like we can't help but change. And so I'm keeping hope alive because I believe in the family, I believe in our community, and I believe that one day we're going to see this Black America thrive. We're going like Black Wall Street. We are going to thrive in our communities and have the necessities of everything that we need, all of these businesses, and really thrive. That's my hope. And that's why I mentor children today. I am keeping that hope alive. I see it in their eyes, and I see so much potential, and we just have to continue to talk to them, to keep telling them what they're capable of doing, and then raising that awareness of what they're capable of doing. We need to take the box off their limitations and just open up the sky for them, because the sky is not the limit. They can go above and beyond. Another slogan at our church: above and beyond. And
Above
that's
and
what I
beyond.
believe for our children.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So you talked about, now we probably gonna spend some time on this because I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, because I know when people look at this now, I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not. I'm just playing devil's advocate when I talk about this. But when we talk about support black businesses, all right. So you are right. We definitely need to support them. And I know people are gonna come for me when I say this, but again, I'm playing devil's advocate. So you will have people say, "Well, you charging too much." One, two, uh, you know, your customer service has to be at some level. So when we support, those businesses, do you when you look at that, like, it's it's hard for some people, because it's like, I support you, but do you, one, give me a good product? Two, do you give me good service? Three, are you trying to charge an arm and a leg? And I get it. You have small businesses that have to charge that in order to continue to run their business. They're not rich. That's why they're starting small to try to become big. But what do you say to that? Because there are people who will say, "Well, I supported black business. Well, this is why I don't support black." Like, you hear all of that, but it's like your own people will tear you down, because you're trying to build yourself up, and you got this business, and you might charge, I'll go to food, because I'm a foodie. So when you look at
Mm,
black businesses in these restaurants, it'll be like, man, you charging that much for, whatever. But at the same time, it's like, I have to, because think about, I got to keep the lights on, I got to still pay all these other bills. So talk about that for a minute, when it comes to supporting black businesses, but you have those people who say, I used to, but I don't know more, because, and they fill in a blank. But then you have the people who do
yeah.
support black businesses, because they understand the hardships behind that.
So a couple of things. One, you're never devil's advocate, right? You're just raising the facts.
Right. Right.
but but two, we do have those out there that are, overcharging and doing the most, right? And I think at that point it is up to us as the community, the buyers, to hold them accountable. And I think we should voice our opinion, where, especially if you know the cost of goods, why are you charging so much? Why? And you start those questions, but I think it should be a conversation. But you do have those businesses that are barely making it and they're not overcharging. Um, and we just need to support them. And then maybe they can get better quality goods, right? I also think that there are businesses out there um, that are overcharging, that are being held accountable, but maybe don't have great customer service. And again, there's there's a way to hold them accountable because I think if I know my worth, I expect to be paid my worth. And that's something else. I think sometimes instead of supporting our Black owned businesses, sometimes they may be friends, right? And we think because they're a friend that I'm supposed to get a discount. But we're not going to go to our white counterparts, right, and ask for discounts. But our Black businesses are paying full price and they need that profit margin. And so I think maybe we go back to educating our own people in some way, shape, or form around what it takes to run a business. And customer service is on the top of the list, right? Because I think if you give someone excellent customer service, that is a good in a certain way, and I would tip for that, right? If I get bad customer service, I'm not going to tip as well. I might write a bad review. I may tell people don't go there. But if we understand what it takes to really run a business as a consumer and as a business owner, and then we can come together and talk about what those expectations are. Sometimes as a business owner, I may not understand my customers or the my target audience, if you will. But then as the target audience, I may not understand what it takes to run a business. And so I may need to be educated in that aspect. But I think, again, it starts with a conversation. And this could be community events. This could be community festivals. It could be seminars, just all kind of creative ways to really get the message out about Black owned businesses and then the businesses to attract who their talent or target audience is. And then the two can come together and really, I think, just um, formulate a way to work together and spend money while they're making money. If that makes sense. I know I went the long way
No, no,
around.
no. You good. You good. You good. No, I appreciated the breakdown of it. I do. I appreciate that. So one of the other things that you talked about was family. Now, I know back in the day, and I was thinking about this last week because I was watching something on TV, and I was like, man, we don't do this no more. Um, and I think about the movie Soul Food when the black family is sitting around the table having conversations Sunday dinner and just recapping how the week went, how everything like I remember those days, but yet I look at today and it's like everybody grab a plate and they go in and do whatever they do. It's not a sit at the table anymore, and it's not. And I'm not saying that we need to go back to that, but I'm just saying how has the past and now changed when it comes to the black family?
I think the change came into play with work, right? We're now in corporate America and we're putting in 10-hour days. And so that leaves very little time for us to really spend time as a family. The other part of it, I think, is our children are engaged in sports. And so it's school for 8 hours, sports for another 2, 3 hours. And so running back and forth to and fro. And that time that dinner time, right, is smack dab in the middle of all these activities. And so we don't have that time. And I think as parents, we really have to be intentional and make every minute count. So it may be in the car ride to practice or in the car ride from practice, or intentional about um, every Saturday we're going to have just family time. So I think when that is interrupted, that you lose that I won't say capability, you lose that availability to have those conversations. Dinner time was the perfect time, and I like you remember those days. And I'm eating because I love to eat, right? And that's when my parents got the most information out of me because they knew if I was eating, I was happy. And we would have those conversations during our dinner time. And I think now we are so busy, so we have to be intentional about family game nights. That was something that I love to do with my children, and my siblings and their children. We would get together and have family game night. So you just have to make it fun. Another thing that we would do in Detroit was go skating. We went skating every weekend, so much fun. So, and on the car ride back, because now we're hyped and we
Right.
exerted on it. We would just talk, talk, talk. And that's where, again, my parents got a lot of information, or the neighbor would take us, right? And she would get information and, of course, share it with our parents. But we just have to be intentional about how we spend time. And as our Pastor Brady says, right, make every moment count, because it's the
Count. Yep.
moments that are fleeting, and it's in those moments that we're able to let our family know that we care and that we're there. My daughter was not a talker. I could not get her to open up for nothing. But what I found was when she was ready to talk, I could not shut her up. so so I was ready. No matter what I was doing, when she came and she was ready to talk, I dropped whatever I was doing so that I can listen to her. And we just got to create that space for them where they feel safe when they're ready to talk, that they're able to talk, and you're not, shoving them off or shoving them away, because then they'll never open up.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just have to be intentional.
Yeah. So when you talk about being intentional and you talk about moments, I remember last year, I was watching something and it inspired me. I got on live because I don't just get on live like that. And so I got on live one night and I was just talking about, moments, and I got a little choked up because of the fact that I think that we miss so many moments, and I think that COVID taught us that. Being able to spend time with the ones that you love, being able to understand that these moments, um, as people who have kids, as you see them grow up, and you say, "Oh, I need you to stop growing," but then when they get a certain age, "Oh, I need you to hurry up and get out of my house." So it's those moments when you have them from a baby all the way up until they leave the nest, as people say, of understanding those moments and understanding to take advantage of those moments, because you just never know. No day is promised, and understanding that no matter what we do, we have to take every moment and we have to take it and and it's like something that we hold on to,
Mhm.
because those moments when people do pass, those are the moments that you remember. Those are the memories that you remember. Those are the things that you think about when you get down. Those are the things that
Mhm.
it brings you back to your memory of, man, I remember this moment in time. And so, it's important that we really do, talk about, and we really do really pay attention to the moments that we spend with family. So thank you for
Mhm.
mentioning that. So one of the things that I want to move to, you talked about limitations, and one of the things that I've learned is to not limit or think that a person has limitations based
Mhm.
upon whatever you see, because you might say, oh, well, you can't play basketball. And the things that we speak are those things that we speak out into the atmosphere, and people start to believe them, and people start to think and say, man, like, am I really bad at this? Because I
Mhm.
haven't been told this. Am I really ugly, or am I really this, or whatever? Because no one has um, planted something or pushed something in you to make you feel a certain way. And so when we talk about the limitations, I think a lot of this generation has limitations because they're not being spoken to in a way to make them know that just because today you can't jump like Jordan doesn't mean tomorrow you can't. and
Mhm.
and and we have to speak life, more life, into this generation. So when you talked about limitations, just kind of speak more and open as far as when it comes to limitations with this generation.
Um, so I'll start with my children. And I always say I have two only children. Because they're 13 years apart. I remember taking my son to college and I was crying. And the chaplain, as he went to a private, or I guess it was public at that point, but he went to a public Christian college. And the chaplain was like, "Oh, it's okay. We'll take good care of him." And I'm like, "That's not why I'm crying." I'm looking down at this little girl. Like he's going to college and she's about to start first grade or kindergarten. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what was I thinking? But I say that as my son, like I said, he went to a 4-year degree college. He graduated from high school, I want to say with it was either uh, I want to say like a 1.5 or a 2.0. There is no way he should have went to a 4-year degree college, but he was accepted as probationary, which meant he had to go in and prove himself. But my family was saying, "Don't waste your money. Let him go to a community college." Now, there's nothing wrong with a community college. I just didn't want him to stay in the city of Detroit any longer than he had to at that time.
Right.
And so he went kicking and screaming, but we got him into college. He was admitted, like I said, probationary. He had to meet with the admissions officer and everything, and they were so impressed with him. Smart as a whip. He was just a procrastinator. I won't say he was lazy. He was a procrastinator. And so he got in there, and when I tell you, I had to constantly talk to him, I had to constantly speak to him to tell him who he was, because what I didn't know is that throughout elementary school and high school, there were people in his school, teachers, principals, telling him what he couldn't be.
Hmm.
And statistically, you believe 80% of the negative stuff over the positive stuff. And so I had to keep speaking, and I wouldn't let him talk bad about himself. Finally, he was about to be expelled because he never um, exceeded what he was supposed to exceed in order to come off the probationary status. But things changed. Hallelujah. he
Amen.
his
Hallelujah.
he graduated with honors. He has his bachelor's degree. It took him, I think, 5 or 6 years but he did it. That is the key. He did it. I was so proud of him. He was proud of himself. And now he understands the power of positivity, the power of speaking into your life. And he keeps doing that. And now he's married with kids, my grandbabies. And he's speaking the same thing over them. He's letting them know that there are no limitations and they can be and do whatever or whoever they want to be. Now, with my daughter, same thing, right? Smart as a whip. I think she wanted to be like her brother. Now, again, he's 13 years older than her. And when he was in high school, she would walk around with his books. She would walk around with his high school books. And when he went off to college, she's like, "Oh, mommy, I'm coming here." So she had in her mind at 4 or 5 years old that she was going to college. And I just kept feeding that. And I remember she came home in the first grade crying because the teacher wouldn't let her read. And I went up to the school to talk to the teacher, and she said, "Well, they're not." She wanted to read this certain book, and I can't remember the name of the book. And she said, "They're not at that level yet." And I said, "Well, does that preclude her from reading because you think that they're not at that level? Did you even listen to her?" So I asked my daughter to go get the book. She got the book and started reading it. And the teacher says, "I didn't know she could read."
Mm,
"Ma'am, you're a teacher. Please do not limit our students." And
right.
I said, not just because she's mine, but for all of these students, when they say they want to do something, let them do it. Even if you think they can't, let them, and then teach them how to do it appropriately. Like, do not put them in a box. Do not limit. Like, that could have destroyed her. Had she not come home and said something to me, that probably would have made her not want to read. So we have to remove the limitations, and then we
Mm,
have to have those conversations with other people so that they don't put limitations on our children as well. And that's one of the things that I love about serving in Firehouse, because it's not just working with our students and mentoring our students, but we're also working with the parents. We have a parent partnership, and it's almost like we're reinforcing what the parents are saying at home, but we're also addressing with the parents what we see teenagers are doing that their child may or may not be doing, but we're raising their awareness. We're giving them that information. So if it happens, they know how to deal with it, right? We have that partnership, and because it takes a village. But if we're all saying the same thing, you are able, you are more than enough, telling them all these positive things of who they are and what they can achieve, they will achieve it. So my daughter went through school achieving wonderful grades. She went to a HBCU, graduated in engineering degree. I cannot remember. I always say chemical engineering, but I think I don't know. It was one of them degrees. She did it in she did it in 4 years. Graduated at the age of 22, starting a position, making almost six figures. And so she did it from a young age. I always knew she was going to college. Now we're at the point where we have the job, right? We have our career. What are we doing to invest? Not just save. I think I think now we're beyond the point of just saving. We need to invest. We need to invest our dollars. We need to invest in ourselves. We need to invest in our communities. We need to invest. And so that's the next phase, right? How do we invest? And then I think as we continue to talk about investing, now we're back to our communities and what we have in our communities, and we're sufficient within our communities because we're investing in our communities, because we've taken the limitations off of what we cannot do, and we're saying what we can do.
mm. That's good. That's good. I think you hit on a lot of good points. I think one of the biggest things is not to limit yourself. I think that we tend to limit ourselves because we in the past we look at our social area and we say, well, I live in the hood. How can I make it out of the hood? And some people succumb to the pressure of drugs and all of this alcohol. But then you have people that actually say, I got to do better for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And some people look at it and say, hey, I got to get my family out of this. I can't have my family in this. And so some people, they push themselves to become better. You sometimes you got to tell yourself, I got to do, I got to want, for me, I got to do better. I got to want better.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to be able to get out and do something to make myself better, and not get stuck in this box of mine, and be able and say, hey, well, I'm from the hood. I can't do this, I can't do that. But I've seen so many people come out making six figures, millionaires, and so many people have stories, but it's up to us to push it on the next generation, speak life into them, and have them understand that at the end of the day, that there should be no limitations on what you can do. You just got to get out there and do it. Like, I'm giving you all of this. Now, one of the things I'll talk about as we're talking about the future and this generation is, back in the day, I wish, that someone would say, hey, you got a free education. And
Mm-hmm.
now, a lot of schools are doing that. A lot of community colleges. I know in my state that they've done that whole free tuition, or I think it's you can go to school for free at the community college, and that's big because back in the
Mm-hmm.
day, that wasn't available. Way back in the day, you didn't really see a lot of us in college. And
Yep.
so as we move the needle forward and as we progress in all these different fields in education, and we look at the next generation, our future, I'm so glad that they got to see um, a black president. I'm so glad they got to see the first black female vice president. And so they can tell their kids that I got to witness that. I got to
Mm-hmm.
see that. Because a lot of people, a lot of older people in there that lived to see when Barack Obama was
Mm-hmm.
elected, they cried because they said, I thought I would never see it in my
Right.
time. But if we take the limits off, we can do anything. Like I said at the beginning of the show, that we are a strong, powerful people. But the thing is, we limit ourselves because of the confounds of where we are. We
Mm-hmm.
limit ourselves because we have not been pushed, because absentee father, because of the neighborhood you grew up in, those things tend to get to a person to where they limit them because they say, well, this is all I know. I need to
Mm-hmm.
make money real fast, but they don't know how to go and do it the right way and understand that you can still make that money, but it's going to take time,
Right.
and understand that you have no limitations. Like like that song says with Israel Houghton, take the limits off of me. Like, be able to express and show that you have no limitations when it comes to that. So I think that that's very important. Now, when we talk about limitations and we talk about that, one of the things that I look at is technology. Technology has grown. I was looking at myself and I was like, man, Miss D, don't you say nothing, but I'm about to say, man, I'm getting old. I know you want to say something, but I look at the fact and I'm like, and I want you to talk about this. That technology has changed. Like I, I still remember when computers, like when I was in high school, we were using typewriters, and I said to
Hmm.
myself, "Oh my gosh!" Like I thought that my mom was old. I thought that that generation was old, but I'm like, man, I remember using floppy disk. I remember having to do all those different things, and now you look at technology. We went from a cord phone, having to have these long cord phones to be able to talk and sit down and not stand in the kitchen or wherever the phone was in your house, to
Hmm.
actually being able to have one of these and walk around and talk. And so technology continues to change. But how can the next generation make that even better? And how can we push the next generation to make it better, but understand the past, but understand that there's a brighter future when it comes to technology?
So a couple of things. I volunteer with this organization called the Turner 12. And the main focus is to spend time with these children from the time they're in um, grade school to the time they graduate from high school. So you're investing your time in these children, but you're also raising their awareness by sharing corporate experiences, by sharing cultural experiences, by sharing, your background experience. You're exposing them to different opportunities, and so you're making them aware that their environment is bigger than the four corners of their street or the four corners of their school. You're making them aware that there's more out there than what they see on a typical day. And so this, I say, well, I've heard it say, and I agree, right? This generation is born with a chip. Like they know how to operate this technology without reading the instructions. And I have to read the manual, right? In fact, my
Right.
mom just bought an iPhone 15, and she's like,
Mm.
"How do I make the print bigger?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't have one, but let me read up on it." But she figured it out, right? But we had to read up on it in order to figure out how to make the print bigger. So I think, and my pastor in Detroit, I call her my international pastor. She always say, and my daughter would always quote me, if I, which I love because she held me accountable, if I said I couldn't do something or, oh, that'll be too hard, oh, I'll never get that, she would always remind me what our pastor said. And I love this saying, which is, you have to see it before you see it, or you never will see it.
Have to see it.
Before you see it, or you never will see it. And so, and if you think about it, with technology, we're evolving to something we've never seen before, but they had to see it before they saw it so that they could go and create it.
Mm, that's good. Okay. That can preach. Come
I
on
could
now.
preach all day
That
long.
that can preach all day long. Okay. So you funny. All right. So technology, we talked about limitations, family, we talked about, knowledge on your own homes. Um, but when we talk about Black America and we talk about how we look at the past, we look at the present, and we look at the future. To you, what has changed for the good and for the bad?
So a lot has changed, yet nothing has changed. I, I, I truly believe that COVID, what happened to George Floyd, raise some awareness. I'm still skeptical around why weren't they already aware, but there were some unity that came forth, especially in those 2 years, 2020, 2021. I was hoping that we would retain some of that unity, but I haven't. I haven't. Doesn't mean it's not happening, but I haven't seen the masses come together like we did around George Floyd, right? Like we did around the killings that were just injustice and just horrible. I We just did a program. Um, so I sit on an organization. I sit on the board of an organization, a nonprofit organization, and we just did a Martin Luther King Jr. Uh, event program, and it was a cafe conversation with a young gentleman. His name is Dr. Stefan Ferguson, and he is the official voice of Martin Luther King Jr. So he came on to speak, and he spoke in the voice of Martin Luther King Jr., and it was powerful. But in his speech, we asked that very same question, what has changed? And honestly, we still have the inequalities around housing, around education, around pay. When we talk about when Martin Luther King Jr. was alive versus like 50 years later, we're still talking about the inequalities in housing, education, and pay treatment. Have we progressed further to getting a little piece of the pie? Yes, but we're still facing inequalities. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you, Ms. D.
So, can you hear me? Am I
I
good?
can't. Yes, ma'am.
So, yeah, we need to really think about the injustices, the inequalities. How do we rectify and how do we move past that? How do we improve our housing, our health, right? Um, the grocery stores in our communities do not offer the same quality of vegetables and fruits in the higher end segments, right? How do we rectify that?
Mm.
So some things have changed. The needle moved a little, but we're definitely nowhere near where we should be.
Okay. All right. So, as we wrap up tonight, I want to ask you this. I want to ask you this question, and then get your final thought. Um, what can we do to move the needle for the future? Can you hear me, Ms. D?
I think I lost you.
You can't hear me? You probably lost me. Okay. So I think Ms. D is having technical difficulties. But that's okay. That's okay. Um, Ms. D, I appreciate you. I know you can't hear this, but I know you'll be able to hear it later when you watch this back. Thank you for being on here. I'll say this: we still have a long ways to go. We still have more things to work on as Black people, as a people of color. We still have things that we're trying to move forward on. We still have things that we're trying to build on. We still have things that we are trying to push the needle to understand that at the end of the day, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. We've come a long way, but we have a long ways to go. And so at the end of the day, let's continue to push. Let's continue to fight. Let's continue to be who we can be, and understand that I'm black, you're black every day of the week, 24/7. But we have to figure out what can we do to better our people, to uplift our people, to not talk bad about our own people. And the biggest thing is for us to understand that we have to. I got you, Miss D. I got you, Miss D.
I don't know what happened. I have a bad connection now.
Okay, no worries. Can you hear me now? She can. Okay. So again, at the end of the day, we have to be able to understand that no matter what we do, no matter what we say, we have to keep pushing the needle to be better, to do better, and to help those who are trying to do better. And so this topic about past, present, and future, we got to help the future. We got to be able to understand that our future is what's going to help Black America, just help the world succeed. And so we have to have, like we talked about, no limitations, and and let our young people know that they have no limitations, that they can go out there and be the next Barack Obama. They can go out there and be the next Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. They can go out there and be the tennis player, Thurgood Marshall, whoever you want to be, you can be, but don't limit yourself because of your surrounding. Don't limit yourself because you know people are speaking negative to you, because at the end of the day, your drive is what's going to push you to where you need to be, not the negativity, but the positivity that people bring and what people say to you is what's going to help you. So I really hope that this two-part series on Black America, past, present, and future helps someone. I hope that you like, you share, um, and go from there. I can't wait. Next week, I'm starting another series about fitness, and we're going to talk about. I'm going to have one of the brothers from a church. He is a fitness guy, so he's going to talk about the fitness aspect. And then the following week, I'm going to have a great woman of God come in, and she's big on nutrition, and she's going to talk about nutrition. We might do, she might cook something and just give pointers on different foods, and making sure that you eat right. Again, we're talking about different ways and different things throughout these conversations about being able to give you life spiritually, mentally, physically, all of that. So I look forward to those conversations. Thank you for being on this show, Ms. D. I know you can't probably hear me, but thank you for being on the show. Thank you all for continuing to support me in this endeavor when it comes to Coffee and Conversation with Kevin Smith. But until next time, y'all have a good night. So no matter what, whether it's morning, afternoon, or late at night, a cup of Joe and a good conversation will always get you right. This has been Kevin Smith, Coffee and Conversation. Have a good night.